and they're at the very early stage because they were coming from a very low level of awareness at the start of the impact. And the only reason for that was that they had always worked on the assumption that it was someone else's problem, because they were a very heavy cloud-centric organization. And so they were told by the cloud provider, we are net zero, we have no emissions. They were then told by their advisors that it doesn't matter because it's scope 3, so it's someone else's problem. And they've now changed that from a cultural perspective, and they're now taking into account all of their emissions, scope 1, 2, and 3. And they found that their scope 1 and 2 as an organization are about 3% of their total emissions, and their scope 3 is 97% of their emissions. So if you are serious about it as kind of a metaverse type organization or AI or any of these platforms, you need to be doing something about it, because IT is such a ginormous part of your infrastructure and your build.
Yeah.
But the challenge is common. The challenge absolutely is really common, is that data is what's holding people back and is causing frustration. And they're having to make assumptions, and they're having to basically live with what we're calling the directionality of data improving. It's a little bit like the Wild West, but the problem is doing nothing is not an option. So it's about doing something and understanding the challenges and inadequacies of the data set that you have.
Yeah, it's at the technical level, but we have plenty of other issues when it comes to what a metaverse could be regarding the environmental impacts, which is making me doing the link with discussion, a bit of a round table. Thank you again, Mark. We have two people joining us to talk. Maud Clavier again. So I will present you again because probably it will go online after the video. So Maud Clavier was an executive of the company VR Room, and also the president of the CNXR, so a foundation of the industry and scientists in French XR. Second, we have Guillaume Lebris. Tell me if I'm making a mistake when I'm presenting you. I will present you as a sustainable video game consultant, but also as the main author of an opinion column that is advocating for not doing the metaverse, basically. So I don't know if Guillaume, you want to jump into what I talked about and what after Mark talked about. So beginning with what was the main reason for you to write that column, an opinion column, saying we shouldn't do it?
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Alexis, for the invitation. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Loud and clear.
Maybe I could start quickly by giving a bit of context. Okay, so I'm Guillaume. I was a game technical designer. I've been in the gaming industry for more than 15 years. I worked in France, China, Canada, in studios ranging from independent to AAA size. In parallel, during the last decade, I've been more and more interested in the climate change issue. And after applying most of what could be done on a personal level, I became interested in my own job. And when my wife and I came back in France, I decided to change my purpose in the gaming industry. So now I help studios as a consultant in two ways, which is to mitigate their emissions. The first one being helping them with the GHG-like protocols. In France, it's named Bilan Carbone, and help them to measure and take actions on their emissions. And the second one is what we call, I don't know if there's a nice translation, we call it new stories or new imaginaries. I would say it's a bit like the soft power in the movies industry. So I help them to change the stories, the gameplay mechanics to promote more eco-friendly behaviors that we hope will help impact carbon emissions on the long term. So, well, you may wonder why I'm here with you. And well, it's a bit more than a year ago, I started writing an article about the environmental impact of the gaming industry. And at the end, I tried to picture the worst case scenario. And it would be what I was thinking was high performance PCs or cloud-based services running never-ending real-time 3D experiences using VR or AR headsets for a much larger audience than just gamers. And well, it turns out that a couple months later, Facebook renamed itself Meta and announced something that felt quite similar to this worst-case scenario. So I got in touch with an eco-friendly media, and they told me to write a column based on the article, because the article was like 15 pages, and they told me, well, you should make it easier to read. I was helped by some of the best experts in ICT impact from France, and we published this column supported by several game studios, developers, and ICT experts. The text is named Metaverse Video Game Studios Warn of Environmental Impact, and can be found on the website Bonpote, which is spelled B-O-N-P and then P-O-T-E. There's an English version, by the way. And to sum it up, we show the exponential growth of the gaming industry and how it uses a lot of hardware and electricity to produce real-time 3D experiences. From there, expanding this technology at the scale of the internet raises questions, especially environmental ones. As it was said just before, we know that ICT already accounts for about 4% of the global carbon impact. And as we know, ICT's carbon impact is growing at a rate higher than 6% per year. But if we want to meet the Paris Climate Agreement, we should lower the global emissions by 5% per year. So ICT is already in an unsustainable situation, and adding another layer of consumption on top of this is quite likely to make the situation even worse. So also, we expect the metaverse to be additive. What I mean is that we don't think that it will replace any travel plans, museum visits, work meetings, and actually some observations from some museums already point the opposite. Visiting a museum virtually actually entices people to go there for real. So it's like a double expense in a way. At the end of the column, we point our responsibility as experience creators, and we advise our colleagues and friends in the industry to aim for what we call the right tech solutions and promote these new imaginaries I just mentioned earlier. And finally, we're not really saying that we should not make, the metaverse, because obviously as gamers know, it already exists in several gaming experiences like World of Warcraft or more recently Fortnite. What we're trying to say is making an internet scale immersive real-time 3D world is quite likely to worsen the carbon and material impact of ICT. And as we are depleting energy sources on the one hand and need to lower emissions for climate reasons on the other hand, well, we're entering what we could call an era of choices. Can be the choice not to make an internet scale metaverse. It can be the choice to make a proven useful use of the metaverse in specific fields such as, I don't know, medical ones, for example. And well, we really have to take the time to think about the right use of this tech. And we don't have the luxury to, pardon my French, screw this up this time around. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, thanks. And I don't know, Maud, if you have insights from the French and European scale of the actors of XR. Are they? I know some associations are asking themselves the question. We talked about it together already, but do you know anyone in the industry that is starting to work on assessing their life cycle of their services, or are asking you or asking other members to do it?
So basically, no, for today, I don't have record of a regulation in going in that way. That's why I'm trying myself with other people to work on it within the CNXR, or Federation of XR Professionals, because it's an issue on many levels. You have the hardware issue that have a short life cycle. So we would need the decisions to be political, to tell all the hardware provider to make headsets that have a longer life and application that works longer on those. I mean, the whole power I have as a content creator is to try my best to ease the data, to have more data about everything, because we can speak for hours about many things, but sometimes some virtual events are less polluting than some real events. But it depends on the layer, it depends on so many things. So as we spoke before, Alexis, my ultimate goal is to have as maximum data as possible about the hardware. So where is it built, which material it has, what is the travel to the people, to the game engine, Unity, how much electricity it costs to GitHub, to the final platform, so that we can have a reasonable use of our technology, because I don't believe we can cut the technology sector from today, even though we know, everyone knows anything digital is polluting and it's terrible. But what we can do is to try to raise awareness to the consumer themselves and to say, okay, you have a VR headset, this is where it comes from, this is what you spend. And so you can be more reasonable with the amount of content you have on your head. I'm sure that if Netflix would have done something like that, maybe it would have raised awareness in people's minds, saying, okay, you're watching a whole season of Casa de Papel tonight, this is the cost for the planet. You know, it's all about awareness.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's we have a French expression about everyone sending themselves the hot potato. You know, that's kind of the thing here. I don't know, Mark, if you have insights, because you told me that a company was shifting and starting to do AR, VR, and trying to assess things, and your point of view and the evolution of the internet being the metaverse, so 3D real time, like with the many factors we already listed before. Do you think that there is a way for us to build something that will not jeopardize everything like even more? I mean, just increase the ICT's impact in general. So, do we have a way creating data, like producing data? We talked about it, but things that we can do that are very, very simple, like you presented for clouds, for instance, that we should include when building software or even hardware, if you have any insight on that. And if you're still here. Maybe you're not, so I have my answer. It's my answer. Yeah, I generally not think. Yep, one of the main issues I had is trying to envision what it implies to have just even one headset. So what it implies for the scope 1 and 2, it's very, very hard to know. No data are available. And what we don't know, because I think Nicholas was asking that before about the plane, and Guillaume kind of answered it for the example of the museum. So basically, VR or AR are on top of all the other things we are already doing, or even it will foster activities, basically. So, but what we don't know about with ICTs in general, and I think it's even worse with XR technologies, are the bounce effects. So we don't know what type of use we will have of a metaverse for real. And I know that there is the French agency, the governmental agency for ecology, that did a report on the impacts of working from home. And is it emitting more GHG or less GHG than going to work every day? What they showed is, it's reducing your impacts, obviously, for the transportations, but since you are at home, you need to use your eaters. So and you need to, maybe since you have more time, then you will maybe take your car to go to another place after work. Well, before you wouldn't do that. So this is kind of a few examples of the kind of rebound effects I was talking about. So maybe you will save time by using the metaverse at any level and save emissions, but you will do other things thanks to the metaverse that will maybe increase the problem. And yeah, just to sum up, and this is what I'm saying in my talk, we don't know anything, and this is concerning. This is concerning because Guillaume talked about it. We know that we have to make choices. I'm getting into, for instance, the raw materials. So we know we have enough of certain metals, but for the type of metals, maybe like aluminum or other things, we need them for reducing our carbon footprint when we are producing electricity already. So if we are using them in hundreds and thousands of headsets, maybe it will just be a big issue just for the supply chain, for instance. So I'm just adding up problems or issues here, but the point for me for gathering us today was to first of all talk about the problem, talk about the issues, acknowledging that it's here and we have to face it. Hopefully it will have some echo, but also,
sorry, I'm allowing myself to bounce on what you say because it's important to raise the problem and to know that we cannot solve them by being alone. I mean, me in my corner, I cannot solve the whole industry problem. Same for Guillaume, same for you. So that's why it's important we gather, we speak together, and we try to put on the boat the right person that has a power, but it's not a one-person thing.
Yeah, most definitely. I don't know if you want to add anything or in the audience, or Guillaume, Maud, or Mark.
I would just to add a little note, just to talk about what we do in France for the CNXR. So we gather many different associations that are from many different fields, and we try to have direct communication with the government. So I would incite anyone from the country to do something similar, because it helps to have more power, to have a bigger voice, and including some people from different industries, because sometimes people are gathered by gaming people, by ecology people, by this or that. It's segmentized. So everyone is trying to push their own actions to the government, but then to have a whole group trying to push few actions, but to push it louder can be a thing that helps the whole industry to move forward on this topic. So yeah.
Thank you. Guillaume, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Well, I think it's going to be a real difficult problem to solve, that to be able to think about the tech before releasing too much of the tech and then having to fix all the issues of the tech. Like if I had to take an example which is not really metaverse related, but it is also, but well, if we think about the Ethereum blockchain, well, it changed from proof of work to proof of stake, and we could say this is kind of a fix of a tech in a way, which made it way more efficient. But much later, and maybe if we can hopefully save this time and think about the right tech from the beginning, that would help reducing a lot of the issues that we might encounter in the future, which is not what we do in general. We kind of make a minimum viable product, we ship it, and then we add and add and add stuff on top of something that was not strong enough on the basics. So I guess this time we have to really think about strong basics to avoid big mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's summing up everything. So when we were talking with Guillaume, I was telling him that my views on how we should treat technology, especially technologies with such high impact that as like AR, VR, to treat them as any treatment. We should think about it as a pill that we are taking. Is it worth it? what are the benefits, what are the risks. Earlier this day, we were talking about the sanitary risks, and right now we are trying to talk about the environmental risks. So basically, we need to see them and to try to evaluate them. I think that's the baseline for us right now. So it works for many fields, but obviously we can't make the promise of a metaverse if we are not aware and able to envision and calculate what are the emissions it would imply. So because this is the society we are living in right now, we need to think about that before it gets global, basically. Thank you. I think we are at the end. We used all the time we had. Thank you again to our speakers and for the roundtable participants. Hopefully, we will have that online. I don't know if it will go to the ACM website or anything. We'll see that with the organizers after. But yeah, it was just a way with those workshops and roundtables to show that scientists, industry members, or even foundations are talking about it, are trying to do things better, and hopefully people will like to join, and we'll be better all together on those issues. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks
to everyone.
Alexis.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
I don't know if you hear us. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Alexis?
Oui, je suis là.
Oui, si tu m'entends, Alexis.
Je t'entends.
Non, mais ça marche pas. Ça marche pas à chaque fois.
Alors, je t'entends sur ton téléphone, mais je crois que tu ne m'entends pas.
Oui, c'est ça. Donc, juste, Alexis, pour la suite, je suggère de solliciter tous les auteurs et les participants pour proposer un workshop un peu plus construit et continuer à travailler sur ce sujet pour une prochaine conférence. Donc, je te solliciterai de nouveau.
Ouais, là, c'était juste pour présenter les enjeux, mais effectivement, on voit qu'il y a besoin de se fédérer un peu plus. Peut-être en invitant, il y avait XR for All, je ne sais pas à quel point ils sont impliqués justement enfin, à avoir des actions concrètes, en fait, parce que c'est ça.
Yes.
On a beaucoup de déclarations.
I suggest a call for paper in a different conference, but I think the maturity is there now.
Peut-être.
Et merci
On
beaucoup.
essaie. Merci à toi, merci à vous. Et bonne fin de journée maintenant, puisque c'est la fin de journée pour vous. Au revoir.
Au revoir, merci.